Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place where we take a monumental stack of sources, articles, research papers, field notes, and distill them all down to the most essential nuggets of knowledge for you.
Today, we are undertaking a truly massive journey. We're going across human history and all the way into celestial mechanics.
Right. Our mission is to look at how humanity observes and, I guess, integrates the sheer vastness and constant change of the cosmos into our culture.
Into our traditions, into our most fundamental knowledge systems. I mean, how do we make sense of it all?
And we've been handed sources that create this incredible duality. On one side, we have the instantaneous, hyper-compressed aesthetic truth you find in modern poetry, specifically something called astro-haiku.
And on the other side, we're diving deep into the millennia-spanning depth of Australian Indigenous astronomical knowledge.
Which is this complex, continuous scientific record preserved across, just unbelievably deep time through things like rock art and oral tradition.
Our focus here is really figuring out how culture acts as a storage system for cosmic data.
You mean like a cultural hard drive?
In a way, yeah. We're exploring the cultural encoding mechanisms. How do you take a celestial event, whether it's, the predictable stately rotation of the stars or an unpredictable sudden catastrophe like a comet impact?
Something totally out of the blue.
Exactly. And how do you preserve that knowledge with enough accuracy and resonance so that it endures for thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of years?
It's a comparison that feels almost philosophical. You're putting a 3-line poem written today up against an oral tradition maintained through 40 millennia.
It really forces you to consider what kind of truth is most important.
The intimate, instantaneous truth of a feeling or the predictive long-term truth you need for survival.
Well said. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with that instantaneous cosmic spark you find in literature.
When we talk about the cosmos-inspiring poets, we have, centuries of references. The universe is the ultimate metaphor for scale, for permanence, and for human fragility.
We can think of all those Western examples, like Keats' poem, his yearning to be as steadfast as the bright star.
Or W.H. Auden's recognition of the perpetual revolution of configured stars as this, huge backdrop against which all our little human dramas play out.
It serves as the ultimate reliable grounding force. It's the closest thing we have to a true constant in the swirling uncertainty of, human experience.
Right.
Our sources cited this really beautiful reflection from the Japanese astronaut Naoko Yamazaki. She noted, "We are children of the stars, children of space."
Wow.
And she added that the history of the universe is etched on our bodies. That sentiment just immediately bridges the gap,
Yeah.
The science is the personal reflection.
And that brings us directly to the Japanese haiku, a poetic form that is just built around precision, compression, and seasonal reference.
Absolutely. The sources highlight how the classical masters use celestial bodies, which are known as Tensu heavenly references, as absolutely crucial seasonal markers, or kigo.
So the kigo is the anchor.
It's the core anchor. Masters like Basho, Busan, Issa, and Shiki. They understood that citing a specific heavenly body, the moon, a specific cluster of stars, the Milky Way, it immediately placed the poem in a certain season.
And it gave it a specific emotional texture.
Exactly. Basho, who is sort of the foundational master, explicitly discusses these two planes operating in haiku philosophy. It's called Fueki Riko.
Okay, let's break that down. What does Fueki Riko actually mean, and how does that connect to the sky?
So Fueki Riko translates roughly to the eternal, or the unchanging, and the current, or the flowing.
Okay.
The eternal, the Fiki, that relates to timeless human truths, our experience of nature, our basic emotions. The current, the Ryuko, relates to freshness, newness, the immediate moment being captured.
And the cosmos, the stars, that's the eternal part?
Very often, yes. The cosmic plane, the Tensu, often falls into the Fueki category, that eternal constant against which the Ryuko, the specific fleeting human experience, is contrasted.
And their mastery is in bringing that massive scale of the eternal down to a single moment you can actually feel.
Precisely. Take Basho's classic haiku, which is the earliest form of haiku. He writes, 9 times awakened, yet it's still the moon before dawn.
I love that.
The poem isn't just about the moon. It's about the speaker's restless night. They keep waking up, trying to gauge the time, and the only reliable timepiece is that persistent, distant moon still hanging there before the sun comes up.
It just perfectly encapsulates sleeplessness and also that reliance on the cosmic clock. It's so precise.
It really is.
Or Issa's sharp, almost humorous observation. A sight to see from a hole-in-the-wall autumn moon.
That's a perfect example of blending the immediate and the infinite. You have a tiny domestic flaw, a mouse hole, maybe, and through that tiny little gap, you capture the massive, perfect, distant spectacle of the autumn moon.
Right. It isolates the immense celestial event down to an immediate, intimate scale. You're juxtaposing imperfection with perfection.
You are. And this is where we can stretch that concept of compression into something that sounds, well, almost like physics.
This is the part I love. The source cites former U.S. poet laureate Billy Collins and his fantastic analogy. He describes the haiku as a moment-smashing device.
This is where it gets really interesting because Collins connects literature directly to energy. He suggests that just as matter is composed of atoms that release this, tremendous energy upon collision or fission.
Right, like in an atom bomb.
In a way, yes. He says time is composed of discrete moments, and when a single perfect moment is completely isolated and captured in the 3 lines of a haiku, another kind of cosmic energy is released.
A powerful moment of dazzling awareness.
Exactly, an aha, insight that transcends the words themselves. The form of the poem, that intense compression, it amplifies the meaning.
And now the field itself has evolved to explicitly embrace science in the form of astro-haiku.
It has.
This is where poets are intentionally infusing scientific curiosity, the anxiety, the fantasy, the fulfillment about space, into that highly compressed literary structure.
It's a modern response to phenomena like, exoplanets, dark matter, or the images from the Webb telescope. The poetry deals with true cosmic scope while remaining utterly emotionally grounded.
Or like Beverly Acuff Momoy's haiku. All the babs, I didn't choose the Milky Way.
Oof. That is just heartbreakingly relatable. Every personal decision, every regret, every road not taken is immediately translated into the astronomical scale of galaxy.
It stops being a personal failing and becomes cosmic inevitability.
Yes. And others use natural imagery that feels both vast and incredibly minuscule at the same time, like sandy praise. Blackberry moon, midnight rain lingers in a snail's shell.
Wow.
You have the enormous moon, which is the source of the light, and then the trace of the midnight rain is captured in the absolute smallest, most temporary vessel possible, the snail's shell.
It's the macrocosm and the microcosm in perfect balance.
Perfectly balanced.
And we should also remember that humor, or high, is foundational to the form. It's not all serious. Busan gave us that memorable image of the snail stripped to the waist under the moon.
Humor is essential for balance. The cosmos, when you deal with it purely aesthetically or scientifically, can be, overwhelming and solemn.
A little intimidating.
Totally. Humor serves as a bridge, ensuring the cosmic observation is relatable and maintains that human connection. By stripping the snail to the waist, Busan makes this tiny creature a conscious participant in the cosmic drama.
And it gives us that perfect grounding punchline.
It does.
So we've seen the power of compression for intimate aesthetic truth. The haiku isolates the instant. But what if that cosmic knowledge isn't about an aesthetic insight, but is the literal difference between survival and starvation?
Well, that demands a completely different kind of encoding entirely, one that has to endure across deep history.
And that's the critical pivot.
It is. We're moving from the world of contemporary literature to the deepest, continuous historical context available on Earth Australian Aboriginal astronomical knowledge. This is a knowledge system designed for practical longevity.
The field of study is called cultural astronomy. It sounds a little abstract, highly interdisciplinary, but what does that mean in practice? How do these sources suggest we approach it?
It means you can't just study the stars in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Cultural astronomy draws its methodologies and its theories from the natural sciences like physics and math,
Okay.
the social sciences, so anthropology, sociology, and the humanities, linguistics, history.
Mm-hmm.
It's an umbrella term that incorporates archaeoastronomy, which is physical alignments of structures.
Like Stonehenge.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And ethnoastronomy, which is the oral traditions, historical astronomy from often colonial written records, and geomythology, which is stories about geological events.
So to understand how they use the stars, you have to understand the entire culture and the environment.
You have to. You can't separate them.
And the core hypothesis of this deep dive, the foundation of all these sources, is what exactly?
The hypothesis is that astronomical scientific knowledge, and by that I mean a systematic, predictive, and repeatable explanation of perceived phenomena, is encoded in Aboriginal culture, specifically through art, through rock formations, and most importantly, through oral tradition. And to grasp the weight of this, we really have to establish the sheer scale of deep history we're talking about.
This is just staggering.
It really is. Modern humans migrated out of Africa around 70,000 years before present. The archaeological and genetic evidence strongly suggest Aboriginal Australians migrated to Sahul.
Sahul, that's the massive landmass that then connected Australia and New Guinea, right?
That's the one. They migrated there somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 plus years ago. This makes Indigenous Australians one of the oldest continuous populations outside of Africa. Their cultural memory is just immense.
So the knowledge base isn't philosophical fluff, like you said. It was absolutely foundational for survival in a harsh and variable environment.
Correct. Astronomical knowledge was crucial for timekeeping, predicting seasonal change, anticipating food availability, deep-sea navigation.
Things you absolutely need to live.
Vital things. Predicting tides, informing rituals, and acting as cultural mnemonics. If you were a nomadic or semi-nomadic society, knowing when the arrival of a certain star signals the migration of a key food source or the start of a dangerous weather pattern, that is vital.
The sky is the calendar, the clock, and the map.
All in one. So let's dive into a specific high-level example of this applied science. The Yuungu people of Arnhem Land and their sophisticated tracking of the planet Venus,
Which they call Banumber.
Banamber, or the morning star. The Yuungu integrate Venus into their dreaming narrative. They explain that Venus came across the sea from the east in the dreaming, naming and creating animals, plants, and lands as she crossed the shoreline.
So she's literally creating the world as she travels.
She's leaving behind a songline, a path of creation and knowledge. This shows its foundational importance in their entire cosmology.
And this knowledge culminates in the morning star ceremony.
Precisely. This ceremony is held when Venus rises a few hours before dawn. But because Venus's visibility cycle is complex and it varies relative to the sunrise, this only happens at certain very specific times of the year.
So how did they know when to plan for it?
Well, when researchers asked a Yuungu elder how he knew when Venus would appear to plan the event, his reply was famously practical. He just said, "We count the days, silly."
I love that. It implies complex, long-term tracking and calculation.
It does. But I keep coming back to the technical difficulty of that specific task. Why is Venus so hard to track accurately over long periods?
Yeah, let's get into that. What's the challenge?
This is the crux of the scientific insight. Venus's motion, as we see it from Earth, is governed by a series of synodic cycles. That's how long it takes for the planet to return to the same position relative to the Earth and the Sun.
And these aren't simple fixed cycles.
Not at all. Venus's orbit has 5 distinct patterns of visibility that vary significantly in duration, anywhere from 116 days up to 164 days.
So you can't rely on a fixed, predictable solar calendar. You can't just say, okay, it'll be 145 days until the next morning star ceremony.
No, you can't. Due to the complexity of the combined orbital mechanics of Earth and Venus, relying on a fixed average will quickly lead to inaccuracies.
You'd be wrong pretty fast.
Very fast. Furthermore, while the general cycle of Venus returning to the dawn sky is about 1.5 years, over the timescales of thousands of years, the relationship between the Earth-Venus system and the background stars, it shifts. It shifts significantly because of precession.
We'll get to precession later, but that's the big wobble.
That's the one. So the cycle can't be accurately predicted over periods longer than a few hundred years without continuous, precise observation.
So we count the days is not folklore. It's an acknowledgement of the necessity of real-time, dynamic, astronomical monitoring.
It is the ultimate statement of applied science. The Yuungu also have this really detailed explanation for why Venus doesn't stray too far from the sun in the sky.
What's their explanation?
They say Venus trails a faint rope behind it. And researchers interpret this faint rope as possibly representing the zodiacal light.
Zodiacal light. That's the cone of light you can sometimes see just before dawn or after dusk, right?
Exactly. It's caused by interplanetary dust reflecting sunlight in the plane of the solar system.
Which suggests a keen awareness of these really faint, almost invisible atmospheric and celestial phenomena.
It does. It shows a level of acute visual observation and systemic explanation that goes far beyond simple mythologizing. The knowledge about the cycles of Venus must change and be recalibrated over time, and the Yuungu demonstrate that ability to maintain a living, functional scientific system.
Okay, so we've established that these traditions are dynamic, but for you, the listener, how do researchers sitting in the 21st century put an actual age limit on an oral tradition that is thousands of years old?
We use positional astronomy, specifically what the sources call Technique 3. This technique uses the measurable, predictable movement of celestial objects to test the connection between a terrestrial story and a celestial pattern.
So you're using the sky itself as a historical clock.
That's a great way to put it. We rely on 2 major phenomena that change the sky over deep time: precession and stellar proper motion.
Okay, let's start with precession. That's the big one, right? The slow wobble.
Precession is the wobble of the Earth's axis, much like a spinning top that is slowing down. It takes about 25,800 years for the Earth's axis to complete one full wobble.
25,800 years. That is a massive cycle.
It is. And this wobble causes the entire celestial sphere, the background grid of the night sky, to shift relative to our horizon and our poles. So what was visible 10,000 years ago might be below the horizon now, and vice versa.
And then we have proper motion.
Proper motion is the individual small movement of stars through space. Stars aren't fixed. They all have their own trajectories. And over tens of thousands of years, this individual movement changes the geometry of recognizable star patterns or asterisms.
So if a tradition is based on a constellation looking like a specific animal.
We can wind the clock back with software and see if it actually looked the same back then.
Okay, let's apply this to the Southern Cross, or crux. It's arguably the most important asterism in the Southern Hemisphere.
For some central desert groups, the four main stars of Crux are seen as the footprint of an eagle, and the two bright pointer stars next to it are his throwing stick.
That's a very specific, recognizable shape.
It is. So to test the antiquity of this interpretation, we use proper motion. We look at the four brightest stars, Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Gamma Crucis.
And do they move together as a single unit?
No, and this is the scientific test. Alpha, Beta, and Delta Crucis are all roughly 320 to 360 light years away, and they generally share similar movement vectors.
But Gamma Crucis is different.
Very different. Gamma Crucis, that's the star at the head or the top of the cross, is significantly closer to Earth, only 88 light years away.
Wait, why does the distance matter so much for how we see it move?
Think of it like watching two jets flying far away in formation. From the ground, they seem to move together, slowly. But if one of those jets suddenly peels off and flies directly over your head, it appears to move across the sky at incredible speed.
Ah, okay.
Gamma Crucis is that closer jet. Because it has a much higher proper motion vector than its three partners, it's slowly distorting the shape of the Southern Cross over deep time.
So we wind the clock back, say, 25,000 years. And what do we find?
Astronomical software shows that 25,000 years ago, the constellation was geometrically quite different. Gamma Crucis was sufficiently far out of position that the asterism would not have reasonably resembled an eagle's footprint.
That sets a hard boundary.
A very hard boundary. That specific cultural interpretation, the eagle's footprint, must have developed less than 25,000 years ago. It confirms it arose long after the initial colonization of the continent.
So it doesn't mean people weren't observing the sky back then?
Not at all. It just means the stories they tell about the shapes are dynamic and updated based on what they actually see.
Let's move to seasonal markers, which are so vital for hunter-gatherers. We can use precession to test these seasonal connections.
Absolutely. The alignment of the Coalsack Dark Nebula, which some groups interpret as the head of the great emu in the sky, is connected to the emu breeding season, which typically starts around mid-April.
So another specific link between the sky and the ground?
Yes, and we can use astronomical models to test how long that celestial-terrestrial alignment has been accurate. The analysis suggests a plausible age limit of less than 10,000 years for this specific asterism connection. Earlier groups likely relied on different asterisms or biological markers.
It's proof that the sky map itself is slowly rotating away from the calendar they rely on.
Precisely. A more dramatic example involves the star Vega and the Malleefowl. In central Victoria, the visibility of Vega was once connected to the breeding cycle of the Malleefowl.
Okay.
Due to precession, that 25,800-year wobble, the sky shifted so much that Vega ceased to be visible from central Victoria. It dipped below the southern horizon by approximately 5,500 BCE.
Whoa, so the star literally disappeared for them.
It disappeared from their sky. And that sets a hard stop on that tradition, regardless of how long the oral history might have persisted.
So assuming the Malleefowl breeding pattern hasn't radically changed.
The connection between Vega and the fowl breeding cycle cannot exceed an age of about 7,500 years. That tradition must have been either abandoned or adapted after 5,500 BCE because the star simply wasn't there anymore.
And finally, a connection that appears slightly more recent, the Pleiades cluster.
The heliacal rising of the Pleiades, that's when it first appears above the eastern horizon just before sunrise, is widely cited in ethnographic records all across Australia as signaling the arrival of winter and frost.
Usually in the June through August window.
Right. Because many parts of Australia experience freezing temperatures in June and July, the visual appearance of the Pleiades signaled the danger of frost in the deep winter season. Testing this alignment against the current seasonal calendar suggests an age limit of less than 3,850 years.
What's truly remarkable here is that the scientific method of positional astronomy confirms what the Aboriginal traditions imply. They are not static myths.
Not at all. They're dynamic scientific systems that were either intentionally updated or naturally changed as the very shape of the sky slowly shifted over deep time due to stellar proper motion and precession.
So, if the last section dealt with predictable slow movements, this next section deals with the total opposite. Unexpected, non-periodic events, the cosmic shocks.
Right. How do you incorporate an anomaly that might happen only once in a lifetime, or even, as the sources say, once in 14 lifetimes, into a cultural record?
That's a huge challenge.
It is, but we have a clear, specific answer to this in the case study of a specific variable star, Eta Carinae.
And our evidence here is thanks to the work of one man, William E. Stanbridge.
Yes, a colonial pastoralist and a supporter of Aboriginal rights who recorded the astronomy of the Borong people, a clan of the Wergaya language group in Victoria back in the 1850s.
Stanbridge's role seems critical here, especially because his observations were made during that early colonial period. He wasn't just a casual observer.
He was unusual for his time. He was a magistrate, a landowner, and he was dedicated to social reform, including women's suffrage. Crucially, he was dedicated to preserving the intellectual and scientific knowledge of the Aboriginal people he interacted with.
And in his papers from the 1850s and 60s, he recorded their names and views of celestial objects.
He did, and what the Borong identified was something they called Kalagoloric War.
And they described this as a large red star located in the constellation Robur Carolinum, which today is part of the constellation Carina.
And this star is unambiguously identified by modern researchers as Eta Carinae during its great eruption.
Let's contextualize the Great Eruption. I mean, how significant an event was this, astronomically speaking?
It was immense. Eta Carinae is a supermassive star, and between roughly 1843 and 1851, it underwent this cataclysmic stellar explosion, throwing off enormous amounts of material and dramatically increasing its brightness.
So it got a lot brighter.
A lot brighter. During its peak visibility, it became one of the brightest stars in the entire sky, reaching a visual magnitude of -0.4.
Which is brighter than every star except Sirius and Canopus.
Correct. So an indigenous group observed a major transient stellar event that lasted less than a decade, and they immediately incorporated it into their knowledge system, giving it a name and a location.
And we know it's the right star.
The identification is robust because it matched Stanbridge's detailed description of its precise position, its pronounced red color, and its exceptional brightness. This is the only definitive indigenous record of the great eruption of Eta Carinae that has been identified to date.
That's incredible. It's absolute proof that Aboriginal sky knowledge is non-static, dynamic, and incorporates major short-lived celestial events.
Their system wasn't just about ancient patterns, it was also a real-time scientific database.
Okay, moving from variable stars to eclipses. Logistically, total solar eclipses are so rare, only about 1 in every 14 lifetimes in any given location. What was the cultural impact of such a sudden and overwhelming event?
The cultural impact was profound and overwhelmingly negative. Eclipses, like other unpredictable celestial events, were often viewed with terror.
A terrible calamity.
Yes, an omen of death, disease, or a sign that someone was using black magic. There are accounts from colonial observers of people running and hiding under bushes in a fearful panic during a solar eclipse.
And the Aboriginal groups had various interpretations of the mechanics behind the eclipse.
Yes, for many groups, including the Yuungu and the Yualai, they actually understood that the moon was the object covering the sun, but interpretations varied widely depending on the region.
What were some other explanations?
Other explanations included a large black bird called Tia covering the sun, or sorcerers placing their cloaks, or buka, over the sun. In the central desert, the phenomenon was sometimes attributed to a mythological man covering the sun with his hand.
But what's truly fascinating is the level of geometric understanding displayed by some groups, particularly the Yuungu of Arnhem Land, who consistently showed this advanced insight into celestial mechanics.
If we look at the complete ethnographic evidence, the Yuungu provided the most systematic explanation. Their traditions accurately explain that the sun and moon move east to west, that lunar phases are responsible for ocean tides, and that the moon covers the sun during a solar eclipse.
But the real intellectual feat noted by researchers was their capacity to recognize that a lunar eclipse was connected to the sun's position.
Yes, a lunar eclipse, of course, is where the Earth casts a shadow on the moon.
So why is recognizing that connection such a high-level intellectual achievement?
Because the Earth's shadow is not immediately visible as the agent of the eclipse. It requires a conceptual understanding of the Earth-Moon-Sun geometry, where the Earth itself is an object floating in space, capable of casting a shadow over the Moon.
It goes far beyond just seeing one object pass in front of another.
It demonstrates a profound systematic comprehension of the solar system geometry.
Okay, let's discuss the most dramatic and destructive transient events. Comets and meteors. They are often conflated because of their fiery nature, right?
In many traditions, they were treated almost synonymously, and culturally they were seen overwhelmingly negatively. Comets, with their tails, were frequently described as flaming spears hurled across the heavens.
Or as malevolent evil spirits.
Right, spirits that drank rain clouds, causing drought. The comet's tail often represented the thirsty family drawing the river into the sky, and we have historical records of observers seeing things like the Great Daylight Comet of 1910 and Comet Skeller-Meristani in 1927.
And the really bright meteors, the bolides, they were even more terrifying.
A bolide is an exceptionally bright, exploding, or audible meteor. They can leave these lingering trails and often make loud sounds, like a crack or a boom, seconds after the flash.
I can see how that would be terrifying.
These events were noticed, and their negative perceptions were magnified. They were viewed as extremely malevolent spirits, like Namorido, a spirit known to grab children's hearts before speeding across the sky, or sometimes just as a physical manifestation of evil magic.
And this fear was actively weaponized in rituals. It connected the heavens directly to human morality and social justice. I'm thinking of the Arente communities here.
Yes, this is a crucial detail for understanding the application of these phenomena. The ritual was performed by a medicine man to punish unfaithful wives, lawbreakers, or enemies.
So it was a form of justice.
A form of celestial justice. The medicine man would perform a ceremony, impaling a piece of bark that represented the person's spirit with small spears that were imbued with arunkilta, that evil magic we discussed. This bundle of spears would then be symbolically flung in the direction of the enemy.
And the resulting cosmic display would be the proof that the ritual actually worked.
Exactly. The resulting celestial event, the actual comet or the visible fireball of a meteor seen by others, was interpreted as the visual manifestation of the curse being cast and the spears flying through the air.
So the cosmological event became a direct, non-negotiable consequence of a human social ritual.
It was meant to enforce moral or legal order. It connects human justice and morality directly to the ultimate authority, the heavens.
Let's use that framework of celestial authority to examine geomythology, the study of oral traditions, as potential historical records of massive geological or cosmic impact events. Can these stories guide us to unseen historical catastrophes?
Geomythology is founded on the idea that myths are not just fantasy, but can be oral records of natural events, whether they're floods, earthquakes, or impacts.
But when we look at Australia's massive pre-human impact sites, we immediately run into a timescale problem.
A huge one. For example, Gossa's Bluff, a 22-kilometer crater, is 142 million years old. Wolf Creek Crater, which is about 875 meters wide, is about 300,000 years old.
Both were formed long, long before human habitation of Australia began.
Exactly. And yet both have associated stories of celestial origin. How do we interpret that?
Right. Stories associated with Wolf Creek describe its formation by rainbow serpents emerging from the ground, or by the moon and the evening star falling too close together and impacting.
It raises a deep question. Does this reflect an ancient indigenous deduction that these massive circular structures must have a celestial origin without any influence from Western science?
Or were the stories adapted after contact?
Or through some deep, deep deductive logic? The sources suggest it remains really unclear how the link was made, given the immense time scale.
But there is one major site that provides far stronger evidence of direct eyewitness accounts. The Henbury crater field in the Northern Territory.
The Henbury field consists of 13 craters covering about 1 square kilometer. This impact event happened about 4,200 years ago.
So well within the timeline of human habitation in the Central Desert, which spans over 20,000 years. This event was almost certainly witnessed firsthand.
Almost certainly. And the oral tradition explicitly reflects the scientific and geological reality of the event.
How so?
An early record from a prospector noted that older Aboriginal people referred to the craters as Sunwalk Fire Devil Rock, or Chindu China Waru Chingiyabu. And critically, they issued a powerful warning against drinking the water that collected in the craters.
And what was the reason given?
The reason given was that a fire devil had filled them with pieces of iron.
That piece of iron is the meteoritic material from the nickel-iron impactor. That's a geological explanation encoded in a warning about safety.
It's applied science preserved through a compelling mythic framework. It demonstrates a clear, accurate, and practical memory of an intensely hot, fiery object hitting the ground and leaving behind metallic, non-potable fragments.
It's a precise historical record of an event that happened over 4 millennia ago.
Absolutely.
Beyond the known impact sites, there are oral traditions describing massive airbursts, which are even harder to verify geologically. We have the Burragrong Illawarra story in New South Wales.
That account is one of the most descriptive we have of a major catastrophe. It describes a massive airburst event where the sky moved, heaved, and billowed, and the stars tumbled and clattered and fell against one another.
And it scattered millions of molten pieces on the ground.
That sounds exactly like a large meteor entering the atmosphere, breaking up high above the surface, and causing a massive airburst explosion that scatters incandescent debris widely without necessarily leaving a traditional crater.
We have all this converging evidence, the Henbury warning, the Burragrong story, the rituals involving spears and fireballs, suggesting that meteorite strikes were not just observed, but had a major cultural and physical impact.
They did. But this leads us to a puzzling statistical paradox.
This is a genuine anomaly in the data, isn't it? It forces researchers to think critically about the nature of the encoding itself.
It does. If we use current scientific models to predict the rate of meteorites large enough to cause harm, so a mass greater than 10 grams falling across Australia,
What did the numbers say?
the statistics suggest that only about 3 to 4 people should have been struck and killed by a meteorite over the 40,000 years of human habitation.
3 or 4 people in 40,000 years. It should be an incredibly rare event.
Vanishingly rare. Yet the sources cite several Aboriginal accounts of people being killed by fiery stones. The oral record seems to contain more fatalities than the scientific models predict.
So something doesn't add up.
Exactly. This suggests two compelling possibilities. The first possibility, and the one that challenges current scientific thinking, is that the meteoroid influx rate over Australia during the last few tens of thousands of years was significantly higher than what current models predict globally.
So maybe Australia was just in a riskier orbital zone for a while?
Maybe. Or the second possibility, which speaks to the power of cultural encoding.
Which is?
The second possibility, and perhaps the more profound one culturally, is that there is a powerful cultural tendency to encode death, calamity, or social justice events through the powerful, non-negotiable visual metaphor of celestial stones and fiery spirits.
Ah, so it might not always be a literal event.
It might not be. If a powerful man dies suddenly in a way that suggests social malice, attributing his death to a fiery stone hurled by an enemy's magic is a mechanism for moral and legal reinforcement.
It makes the sky an active participant in human judgment.
It does. So in either case, whether physical or symbolic, the sky is never a passive backdrop.
What an extraordinary deep dive into human observation. We've traveled from the precise, instantaneous aesthetic truth captured in a 3-line haiku, that moment of dazzling cosmic awareness that Billy Collins called a moment-smashing device,
All the way to scientific records preserved in oral traditions spanning tens of millennia, like the Yuungu precisely counting the days for Venus.
we have confirmed 2 critical planes of human connection to the cosmos. On one hand, you have the artistic and literary response to the overwhelming scale of the universe, which offers intimate comfort.
And on the other, you have the systematic, careful, and predictive observation performed by Aboriginal astronomers. Their knowledge was practical, used for prediction, survival, and social application.
Which provides undeniable proof that science, as a systematic, testable explanation of perceived phenomena, is not unique to Western philosophy.
Not at all. It's deeply universal. And the depth of this ancient continuous tradition continues to reveal findings that challenge our assumptions about the earliest human engagement with science.
It really does.
Indeed. It encourages us to look deeper at what remains uninterpreted in the material culture. Think about the stone arrangements we've studied. The Woody Young stone arrangement in Victoria, for instance, aligns perfectly to the position of the setting sun at the solstices and equinoxes.
Which confirms that material culture was used as a physical instrument to track the precise movements of the Sun and Venus.
It absolutely was. But the truly provocative thought, the puzzle that remains open, lies in the mystery of certain linear stone arrangements discovered in New South Wales.
Okay, what's the mystery there?
Ongoing research shows that while many of these structures are clearly astronomically aligned to solstices or equinoxes, some of these stone rows appear to be uniquely oriented toward magnetic north.
Which is puzzling because
It's puzzling because there is currently no ethnographic or archaeological evidence that Aboriginal people had any known mechanism for measuring magnetic north.
so it raises the question, were there subtle observational techniques we haven't yet identified?
Or are these orientations functioning based on some forgotten celestial pole marker that happened to align with magnetic north at a certain epoch? The cosmic record, carefully observed and encoded over deep time, continues to provide us with these profound, actionable puzzles that demand our attention and our ongoing collaboration.